Welcome to the Scouting Lab. I'm Chris Trapasso with Cover One. And within the Scouting Lab series, over the next few weeks and months, I will be giving full evaluations of some of the best prospects in this draft who I think the Bills need to prioritize, particularly in the early rounds. First up inside the Scouting Lab is Texas A&M wide receiver KC Concepcion. And I picked Concepcion for the first Scouting Lab video for two specific reasons. First and foremost, I love Concepcion on film and think he would be the perfect addition to the Josh Allen passing offense. He is what the Bills offense has been missing the last few seasons. And secondly, it is very reasonable to expect that Concepcion will either be available somewhere in the 20s to get within striking distance of a patented Brandon Beane trade up, or to just be available when the Bills go on the clock at number 26 overall. All right, let's jump inside the lab and dive into the film. Okay, this first play that I'm going to show is nothing special, but it gives you a little bit of a preview of what Concepcion can do with the football in his hands. His game is predicated on explosiveness. Here, it's just a little stick route around that flat defender who's following that wide receiver in motion. Watch where Concepcion catches this football and where he ultimately ends up. Catches it at about the 36 or about the 31, and ultimately gets like 6 or 7 more yards after contact after he caught the football. So even though Concepcion is like 5'10", 5'11", and is going to be around 180 to 190 pounds, he's not super big. He plays with plenty of juice and deceptive power. All right, play number 2. I chose this specifically because it's early on in the video, and it mirrors what I look at early in evaluation of any wide receiver. How good is a wide receiver beating press coverage? And for only being a 3-year collegiate player, being young, he's only 21 years old, and being smaller, Concepcion is very proficient at beating press coverage at the line. We get an outside release here to an inside crossover coupled with a swim move that is not just reserved for pass rushers. And then you see the acceleration. His game is predicated on, I think, subtle nuance and plenty of juice, tons of explosiveness to win vertically down the field. Okay, here you're going to get the outside release. It's coming up right here. Outside release, inside swim, the crossover. And Marcel Reed just overthrows this pass, but there was a lot of vertical separation, something that has not been part of the Bills' offense the past couple of seasons. And I am so grateful to get access to a fair amount of all 22 film at the college level. Super grateful for that. And I'm really grateful to be able to share it with you so you can see some of the things, especially when you're watching a wide receiver, that you might not get on the broadcast angle if they're not actually getting a target. Concepcion is at the bottom of the screen here, and this is just an awesome release again. This is on a slant. He wins to the inside, he uses a little hand swipe, and is open, but the ball ultimately doesn't come his way. That could have been a big play if that was not a run play, or if it was an RPO and Marcel Reed decided to keep the football himself and throw it to Concepcion. All right, now he's up top here, at the top of the screen, and this is against the cover 3 look. So it's not just all about him beating zone. He makes a catch on an in-breaker, and similar to that first play that I showed of Concepcion, take note of the explosiveness and the kind of surprising power that he shows after the catch. The Bills have been good after the catch, Khalil Shakir and company, but we haven't seen this routinely from an outside receiver, really since Stephon Diggs in this Bills offense. So they get cover 3 here, in-breaker, here it comes. He's open, catches the football, and then really shows that he's not willing to just go down on first contact. He wants to play with deceptive power through tackles. I love that about his game. On this play, he's at the bottom of the screen. They have to check to the sideline here, which that's obviously not going to be the case in the NFL. But this is a one-on-one situation, and I'm highlighting multiple defenders here for a specific reason. He shows that swim release again, which is really nice. And you want to see that, especially from a young wide receiver prospect. Again, Concepcion's only 21 years old. But this corner has outside leverage. Why? Because he has a safety to the inside. So he knows I have help deep to the inside. I am guarding against any throw or any route from this wide receiver, in this case, Concepcion, to the outside. But after Concepcion wins to the inside, he has to get outside on this flag route. And he wins vertically and then makes that break toward the sideline. And there's a little bit of separation where if the throw would have come in his direction, he could have made a catch. There was a throwing window here. It would have been tighter, but a really good sign of his ability to create separation, not just vertically, but even against the leverage from the cornerback being on the outside. There's a swim. And right there, if that throw was made toward that 20-yard mark, he was open. That could have been a completion. I'll show it again. Let's go back. Here's the swim. And then he breaks to the outside when that cornerback did not want him to be able to get outside of him, having outside leverage there. All right, next play. Fast forward to the label here. He's down at the bottom. This is another key element to any wide receiver coming into the NFL, and really a lot of receivers who are already in the NFL. You need to be able to be quarterback friendly. And Concepcion shows that he knows how to work back to the football. If he doesn't get the ball immediately, perfectly timed on a comeback, that he should continue to work downhill toward his quarterback, because he knows the cornerback that's guarding him in coverage is going to be working back toward the quarterback as well. So if he stays stationary, this could be a pass breakup or an interception. Watch what he does after he does not get the football right away. And again, take note of him after the catch. There's the comeback. He works back to the football, makes the catch, and pretty effortlessly gets like 11 yards after making the catch there. That's extra. That's an extra first down for the Texas A&M offense. Here he's at the top of the screen. And also take note of where you're seeing him aligned. I will talk about that toward the end of the video. But again, he's on the outside of this alignment here. And this is one issue that Concepcion does have on film. I'm not just showing a highlight reel for Concepcion or any of these prospects in the scouting lab. He did have 7 drops last season on 101 targets. The season before at NC State had 7 drops on fewer than 100 targets. So the drop rate over the last couple of years is right around 10, 11%. You want that to be realistically within 3 to 7, 5%, somewhere in that range. But I will show you this play, and there's one other drop that I will highlight. And then I'll later tell you why I don't think it's that big of a deal. So he gets open. They kind of scheme him open here. They run those 2 slot receivers vertical, let him come underneath on a slant, and just does not make a good hands catch here, or attempted a hands catch, and it's dropped and nearly intercepted. That's certainly something that Concepcion does need to work on. I don't know if he has small hands or it's a technique issue, but that is the one clear weakness that I think he has on film. Just those concentration drops, which usually are not that big of a deal. Okay, this is my second favorite play within this Scouting Lab episode for KC Concepcion. This is a blaze out. And I always think of this route as the Julio Jones route, because I remember seeing a cut up of Julio Jones in his prime at like 6'3", 220 pounds, run this very intricate route better than any wide receiver in the NFL. On this route, when you're a wide receiver, it's typically run from the outside, almost always run from the outside. You get vertical. You sell that you're running a go route. Then you sell that you're either running a post or a dig. So it's an in-breaker. You slam on the brakes, break to the inside. Then after like 2 or 3 steps, you slam on the brakes again and break toward the sideline. If it's run well, it creates huge separation. It is a very difficult route to run and an exceptionally difficult route to cover. Not a lot of receivers can throttle down and explode multiple times in a route and create separation. Watch Concepcion here. Watch how wide open he gets. Get a little bit of off cover or showing off coverage. It's like cover 3 there. Wow. Let's watch that again. As I was talking and trying to ID what coverage it was, watch Concepcion run this route. There's the break in and then out. Oh my God. Now the throw doesn't go toward him. It's not a target for Concepcion, but he has this corner completely turned around. There he's slamming on the brakes after selling the dig. And the Bills have not had that in their offense since Stephon Diggs. Mac Hollins could not run that route routinely. Gabe Davis, any of the receivers last couple of years. Amari Cooper in his day certainly could, but not 2024 Amari Cooper. And Brandon Cooks, maybe, but he's certainly lost some juice into his early 30s. That was like the best run blaze out that the Bills would have had the last 3 or 4 years. Okay, here is part of the reason why I'm not overly concerned with the drops, because Concepcion is a very proficient contested catch winner at like 5'11 and 185, 190 pounds. So he's not big, but the ball tracking ability, the leaping skill, and just the ability to come down with the football and absorb a hit, which we know the Bills have had problems with those marquee catches in traffic, especially in the playoffs the last few years. Concepcion can come down with these throws more often than not. This is just juice, release ability, and watch how he is prepared to absorb this hit from the deep middle safety, does so, and hangs onto the football. Here's the throw from Marcel Reed and takes the hit. No big deal. That's a 50-plus yard gain for the A&M offense. That's what the Bills need. They need all of those elements from their outside receivers, and they have not been able to get that. This is the second drop that I'm going to show. It's not all bad because Concepcion does win to the inside, shows a little bit of handwork against press and is wide open, but lets the ball kind of get into his frame a little bit instead of using his hands, which on a lot of other targets, he does show the ability and the wherewithal to be a hands catcher. It doesn't do so here. Wins to the inside against inside leverage. Like this corner does not want him inside because he does not really have a ton of help. And look where he's positioned. He's positioned like a half a yard inside. Concepcion still wins to the inside, but it's got to be a catch. There was that linebacker kind of floating underneath it, but that just absolutely needs to be a catch. And it's probably something he's working on now and will work on once he's in the NFL. Okay, now we're thinking of the Bills offense, and Joe Brady loves the wide receiver screen. Some people don't love it. It actually was more productive than I think fans gave credit for, but it mostly was useful and effective with Khalil Shakir because Khalil Shakir is a really excellent yards after the catch receiver. I think a big reason that a lot of those plays went for 2-yard losses or no gain, they were trying them outside of to just Khalil Shakir. They were trying them to Dawson Knox and Brandon Cooks. Last year, Amari Cooper. They didn't really have the horses to throw these tunnel and bubble screens to their wide receivers to pick up those high percentage throws that can net you 10 easy yards. Concepcion has that juice to be useful in the wide receiver screen game, which I think Joe Brady will and should like a lot. It's set up really well for the A&M offense here with those corners off. Just an easy little bubble, and that is a fair amount of juice. I think a lot of juice, and an easy 10 yards. Let's watch that again. That just goes parallel to the line of scrimmage, catches the ball, doesn't mess around, just gets north-south, and that's a first down. Like having that, it will be part of the Bills' offense with Joe Brady moving forward. So to have the horses that have the juice that can get you those 10 yards easily, I think is really, really important. Okay, here, they use Concepcion on a half motion and then a deep over. And I want to highlight this play because I think a lot of times I'm rating them in my scouting reports. You guys are reading them anywhere on the internet. Range, the term range, it's almost strictly reserved for corners, linebackers, sideline to sideline range from the deep middle at the safety spot. Concepcion shows that wide receivers need range too. Quarterbacks need to be able to throw the ball out in front of them, especially down the field, and they need to be able to speed to hit the accelerator with their speed and use the catching ability outside of their frame to range to get the football. And Concepcion does so there very well. or on this play very well. He just needs to get across the field and cross the face of that deep middle safety to make this catch. Watch where he starts from and where he ultimately makes this catch, very, very close to the sideline. There he goes across the field. He sells like he's going to run right at the corner, breaks out, and makes that catch outside of those really wide numbers at Texas A&M. So that is just effortless, fluid speed, breaks, and then knows he needs to really put on the acceleration and makes that catch, takes the hit, stays in bounds, and that's a big gain for the offense again. And that was during the Brian Daboll era, Ken Dorsey era, and certainly even with Joe Brady. That deep over run by an outside receiver was very, very integral. And I think one of the, I don't want to say an easy throw, but a easier explosive. If you can get a receiver that can run that route and run it well, that can be an easy throw for Josh Allen that nets you 20, 30, 40, 50 yards. Okay, here is another example of the explosiveness for KC Concepcion, what he brings to the field after the catch. They scheme him up underneath, open. It's kind of similar to that drop that he had on the slant, and watch the juice post-catch. Makes the catch, and then instant acceleration. That first corner can't get to him, reaches out. It's kind of a bad arm tackle attempt. Catches that ball like at the 24 and is all the way down to the 15 when he's tackled. He actually slipped there, but an extra 9 yards post-catch. So another element that Concepcion can bring to the field, I do think is something that Joe Brady probably wants to incorporate into this offense again, and really has been missing. I said earlier, those intricate routes from the outside have been missing since the Stephon Diggs days. The jet motion, end around, jet sweep has really been missing since the Isaiah McKenzie era for the Bills. Now, I do think that Concepcion gives a lot more in terms of being a full, well-rounded wide receiver than Isaiah McKenzie did. But the Curtis Samuel jet motions and jet sweeps didn't work very well. They tried it with Shakir a couple times. It's not really his game because he's more quick with balance and vision than pure juice. Concepcion can absolutely spend time as a gadget type player in specific packages that can hit big plays on what is super high probability of this being a successful play at the handoff. It's whether you want to call it a pass or a run, this is a very high percentage play for the offense. Note the cutting skill that Concepcion shows here. Here's the jet motion, and it's a quick handoff. He makes a cut here, and then again, making that safety miss, and that's like a 15-yard gain, and he didn't even go down. He showed that power again at his size, that he has that to his game. All right, here is another contested catch. Or no, I'm sorry, that's the next play. This is a release. I just wanted to highlight this because it's a great release. The other play that's a contested catch is also against Arkansas, and that's the next play. Release, stacks the corner, and then it's just gone. And this is as good as you're going to see. And again, this is something that's been missing from the Bills offense on the outside. Release and go. Hit the accelerators. Foot on the gas. There's the acceleration, or there's the release, acceleration. Doesn't get the throw in his direction. And maybe would like to see him stack the corner a little more, like get on top of the corner, run like on top of him a little bit. But I'm assuming that Marcel Reed watched the film and the Texas A&M coaches and said, man, you missed one here because you ended up throwing a back shoulder to the sideline when you had to the field side a wide open touchdown, especially with that deep middle safety as the only back end defender that could have made a play on this ball. And this would not have been a pass breakup. This is a wide open KC Concepcion winning with his release at the line of scrimmage, and then his acceleration down the field. Inside, and he was gone. And you kind of see him as he's like going across the goal line. He's like, man, we had one there that we missed. So this next one is the contested catch. He's down at the bottom, again, on the outside, and I will get to that in a second, the numbers behind this. There's a little bit of a half motion, and he just has to, again, cross the face of this safety. And he does so. The safety is kind of lackadaisical, and I will say Concepcion doesn't look like he's running full speed here, but I'm most concerned on this play about tracking the football. It's kind of gets on him in a hurry because Marcel Reed has to throw the football a little earlier than I think he wanted to. But tracking the football and coming down with it. That is very important. And again, it's been missing from the Bills offense in those critical moments over the last couple of years in the playoffs. There's the half motion, and he's across the face of the safety. There's the ball, and leaps, makes the catch, and it's 6. That was a play that Stephon Diggs would make routinely, and then he kind of didn't make it routinely. But since then, the Bills have not had that in the offense. This is the final play of the KC Concepcion scouting lab. I was just trying to think if there was one other Arkansas play that I missed, but no, this is the last play. This one, if all the rest of the plays, the other 16 I showed you, didn't get you excited, then this one absolutely will. This is release. This is speed, separation late in the route. And then I won't spoil it for you. You need to see what he does after the catch here, because it is sensational. Watch. At first, I thought it was a push-off, but it's not. It's just subtle route salesmanship that gets him completely wide open on this play. Watch this route. This is a deep ball. Down the field. Rides the safety or the corner. Is he going to go to the inside? Nope. Outside. Wide open. Easy throw for Marcel Reed. And then look at this. Oh, my God. Look at that hustle. And leg churn. He's going to be like 5'11", 185, 188 at the combine. And he carries 2 Mississippi State defenders into the end zone. How good is that? Let's watch that whole play one more time. Outside release. Leans in like he's going to run a post. Breaks very rapidly to the outside. Stays on his feet and carries that defender into the end zone. Sensational. So, hopefully you're on the same page as me now, and that you understand why I love KC Concepcion and think he would be such a great add to this Bills offense, because he is pretty intricate in his release package, in his route running ability, and his contested catch skill. And he's a great speed guy. And that has been something that I think the Bills have been really lacking. And they got a little glimmer of it with Brandon Cooks, but they probably got it 3 or 4 years too late with that wide receiver, being that he was 31 years old in the 2025 season. Concepcion's 21. He was very productive at NC State and then transfers into the SEC at Texas A&M and was super successful and productive last season. So now diving into the numbers before I finish here on the first episode of the Scouting Lab. At NC State in 2023 and 2024, Concepcion was in the slot about 85% of the time. You're hearing 5'10", 5'11", 185, 188 pounds. You're thinking, that's a slot receiver. And he was, early in his career, a slot receiver. But last year, in the Texas A&M offense, at his size, Concepcion played on the outside 65% of the time. And almost every rep that I showed you in this Scouting Lab episode, he's on the outside. He was winning against press man coverage, off man, cover 3, cover 4, didn't matter. He can win on the outside. And you do not need to be 6 foot and up or 200 pounds and up in today's NFL and be a proficient and efficient wide receiver on the boundary. And I think Concepcion proved 65% of the time on the outside, he can win on the boundary. And in those contested catch situations last year, Concepcion won on 10 of 15 of those contested catch plays in traffic. That's 66.7%. That is 2/3 of the time when there was a corner or a safety in tight, typically down the field, he was coming down with the football. That is a very high rate. The 50-50 fallacy, like I like to call it, is that 50-50 balls, if you're a 50-50 receiver in those contested catch situations, you're great. That is awesome. It's usually 30 to 40% contested catch win rate for the perceived to be better wide receivers in that area. Concepcion was at 67% last year. So hopefully you liked the first episode of the Scouting Lab. Please like and subscribe. Leave a comment below for your thoughts on this video on KC Concepcion as a prospect, or who you think the Bills should draft at wide receiver, or who you want me to highlight next inside the Scouting Lab. Like and subscribe to get more Scouting Lab videos during this pre-draft process. I'm Chris Trapasso, and until next time, this was the Scouting Lab.